Within an ecosystem, we have certain communities which are interacting with each other, and within each biotic community, we have certain species which again are interacting within themselves. Now, in a biotic community, there is certain amount of species interdependence. That means each species is dependent on some or other species to certain extent, and there are one-to-one species interactions. Now, what we are dealing with this in this particular lesson is the interdependence between the species in the given biotic community. Now, the first thing that for which the species would be interdependent is food. You see that there are various trophic levels within the biotic community, and those trophic levels are related to each other. They are interdependent on each other, and when I say trophic levels, I am referring to certain species which belong in that level. They are interrelated to each other, they are interdependent on each other for obtaining food, okay, food resources. So, food is one such thing for which the species are interdependent. Now, the second type of interdependence is that we had done about zoophily, we had done about zoochory. This is another example of interdependence, where we see that certain plant species, they have developed special morphological features in order to enable pollination within them, and they are dependent on plants, on animals or insects or birds for development of the pollen grains, for development and for pollination. Okay, so this is another example of species interdependence. Then the third example for species interdependence is nest parasites or brood parasitism. You must have heard about. We discuss about parasitism as well when we talk about the interactions, but over here we talk about brood parasitism, which is a type of interdependence where the species, one species is dependent on other species for the nest. So, the example is cuckoo bird. I am not giving the examples over here because you know what all could be quoted. We have special chapters dedicated to these two topics, and food is covered previously already. So, we have example of cuckoo bird, which depends on the birds of crow, on the nest of crow. So, they are interdependent. Cuckoo is not going to complete its reproductive cycle if it does not depend on nest of the crow. Then we have the example of mimicry and camouflage. Okay. Now, what is this? Mimicry is copying a particular organism in such a way that your predator avoids seeing that you resemble that organism. Now, supposedly we have an example of butterfly. That butterfly has mimicked or copied some other butterfly which is highly distasteful. So, the predator would not come and attack that particular butterfly. So, you see mimicry is a good example where an organism is dependent on the external characters or the external features of other species, and in a way it is beneficial for that organism. Camouflage is a condition where the organism is going to depend on its surroundings. It would take up the external look in such a way that you're not able to distinguish between the surroundings and the organism. So, in the case of mimicry, we have example of monarch butterfly and viceroy butterfly that I told you. One is highly distasteful, it copies it and in a way is saved from predation. That is the example of mimicry. While in the case of camouflage, you know what grasshopper looks like? It looks like a leaf. Supposedly it is sitting on some grass leaf. You will not be able to make out whether it is a grasshopper or it is a leaf. That is example of camouflage. Then you have the example of praying mantis. Now, this praying mantis, if it is sitting in twigs, fallen leaves, you cannot distinguish which one is mantis and which one is the dry leaf. Then we have stick insect. It totally resembles the twigs, okay, or thin sticks which fall down from the plants, dry sticks. So you have examples of camouflage. What is this? This is nothing but species interdependence. Grasshopper is dependent on the plant species for taking up its external root and in a way avoiding predation or death, you can say. Same is in the case of these. In the previous case of mimicry also, the organisms are interdependent on other species, but they are avoiding death. So avoiding death is a big thing in case of ecology, because you have to survive, you have to leave your progeny, then only you are considered ecologically successful. And the last interaction that we have, not interaction I would say, interdependence, is scavenging. Now what is scavenging? Scavenging is a condition where the organism is going to feed on a dead animal which has been killed by someone else. Okay, so the organism would feed on a dead animal which could be prey to someone else. Now you must have seen, if ever you are fond of watching animal documentaries on television or somewhere, you must have seen that the lion or tiger, they attack a particular organism and then they leave that organism. A group of hyenas is following it, they come and eat whatever is remaining. So that particular interdependence is scavenging. Also in case of scavenging, we have the example of vultures. They are going to feed upon dead animals. They are going to eat up the entire animal carcass, so that first of all, the waste that is being generated in the environment, though it would be decomposed by microorganisms as well, but they are playing a huge role in decomposition. That is an important aspect of ecosystem, and of course biotic communities are involved in it. So we have scavenging, we have the example of vultures, we have the examples of hyenas, and we have the example of crows. Otherwise they are omnivorous, but because the interaction is such that they are going to eat an organism which is killed by someone else, we call it scavenging. It is an important point in the process of decomposition, because the maximum amount of dead animal carcass would be eaten up in the case of scavenging. So this is also a type of species interdependence. This is important because it has an important role in determining the structure of ecosystem. So this is all about various species interdependences which we see in a bio.